Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast Learn with a Leader. So, MOUSHUMI Dhar, thank you so much for accepting the request for being on this podcast. So, I'll just quickly give a brief about MOUSHUMI here. MOUSHUMI is a B School speaker, a panelist, a keynote speaker, and industry influencer. Right. MOUSHUMI has also received 4 industry awards, top 100 HR power leaders in Asia. Isn't that awesome? Being a woman, bringing these many things on the plate, it's exemplary and very inspiring. Disruptive CHRO of the Year, Iconic Women HR Leadership Award, Times Women Leader of the Year. Which year was this, MOUSHUMI? Times Women Leader?
Just now. This is like the very recent award.
Awesome. Kudos.
Thank you.
MOUSHUMI has worked with multiple organizations, big tech firms. She has been with Microsoft, Boston Consulting Group, leading HR for Ola Cabs, Zycus. Throughout the startup, she has been quite exemplary. Compass. Currently, she is a CHRO for PropTech group called Blocks. Outside of this, MOUSHUMI, I'm very much impressed about your overall art-based foundation work that you're doing. You are an artist, and you have started a art-based foundation called Art for Heart, which is primarily helping to raise money for the charity through art pieces. And MOUSHUMI is a strong advocate for gender harmony and work with independent influencers to run social events, sessions. And that's where I believe, MOUSHUMI, that's the reason why you're here. Hopefully, we can share some insights for the people who are listening to this, and we're gonna rock. So with that, kudos to all your awards and experiences, MOUSHUMI. Overall, I believe, MOUSHUMI, you have close to 18 to 20 years of experience, if I'm not wrong.
That's right. Yeah. Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity as well.
Sure. No problem. So before we start, MOUSHUMI, you want to share any thoughts around the budding leaders in the organization, specifically the tech organization? Any thoughts from your side?
Ashish, leadership is an inbuilt quality and it can be enhanced. And it does not need to be a job that gives you that opportunity. One can have leadership skills coming out in schools, in colleges, in the debate forum, in participating in various things, voluntary activities, etc. So I think, it's a very generic skill and a very important skill. That's what I would like to mention. The reason why I'm saying this is sometimes people get scared.
Mm-hmm.
They get very intimidated by the thought of a leadership role. So it's important to understand, just like, say, project management is a skill or any other skill, leadership is also a skill.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to start with, MOUSHUMI, considering that, leadership has to be there, and it is leaders are not born, they are made. So what would be your thoughts around how can people develop effective leadership skills? So for example, let's say from your experience, what are the key skills specifically for software engineers and developers, what they should focus on developing these becoming effective leaders, right?
Okay. This is my favorite topic, having worked in many tech firms.
Yeah.
And what happens is, in a typical life of a software developer, they are into solving problems on a daily basis, a business problem. They're coding it, finishing some work on time. So then they have to regularly move on a tunnel vision kind of a mode. At one point of time, they are supposed to look at a problem singularly and not get distracted by other things. Now, when we talk of being a leader, this shift has to be there, which many people find it difficult. For not just a tunnel vision, you also need to learn multitasking. Should have a long-term vision. Try to look at things from multiple angles and not just, I need to fix this problem right now. So that is the shift that is important, critical, and also difficult. So problem solving at a smaller level to a long-term solutioning mode. The journey can be quite interesting, and it can also be difficult. And sometimes you have to do both together. So while you have to fix a smaller problem right now, you also need to keep an eye on the long-term vision. This is one part of it. And the other is, as we grow higher and the leadership aspect gets added to the job quotient, the emotional intelligence has to be there. Because it's important to know people, understand people, manage their emotions, egos, biases, prejudices, you name it, and it's there.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very good point that you've brought in, right? Because emotional intelligence, or we also call it, like, measure it in terms of emotional quotient, right? For the leaders.
Yeah.
So we do not know how to basically respond to the emotional situations that are happening around the workplace, be it our team or peers, or maybe even sometimes, our upper level or bosses. We need to, and that's a very important topic for the leaders, and that have kept in for, to go a bit deeper later on. But yeah, can you touch upon some example wherein, let's say, you have seen that, that emotional quotient or emotional intelligence was there required, but then it was not followed at all. And that was the one which was missing, which actually created a lot of chaos. Any situation, without taking any examples of names of the companies, if you want, or you want to share it, feel free.
So I would like to take the journey that I think the entire world took, 2 years of COVID, wherein people suddenly had to make a huge shift from working in offices, having personal interactions on a daily basis, to a completely virtual mode. And to add to that, there was fear of the virus, of the epidemic. People were having losses at home. People were stressed. So everything put together became a melting pot of unmanaged emotions, fears, tribulations. So this was a testing period. And this is when a lot of people swam, flew, and some of them sunk. So here, I think this was the time when every organization, every leader, every human being really needed to tap into their EQ. Some of them did well. So for a simple example, when people are logging in from home, now there is a possibility that some people are misusing the opportunity, that they say internet not working or something else, and they're not doing their job on time, or they're not doing the amount of work they're supposed to do, quoting some issues which we are not able to test. So at this time, we can either react with two kinds. One is, you are wrong unless you can prove yourself right, or you are right unless we find something to distrust you. So with the first approach, it becomes like you're putting the onus on the other person. In the second approach, what we do is we are giving the trust, confidence to a person, and that automatically takes off the pressure from us.
Absolutely.
So for a emotionally matured leader, it is a good opportunity to try the second one. Now, normally people would say, let's be cautious. Let's not let anyone take advantage of the situation, and try the first one. Let's have checks and balances in place. Let's test it. Yeah. But what happens when you do this is you're blocking your own bandwidth. Yeah. So it's a better idea to go for the second one. When you tell, you have your checks and balances at the background, no problem there. But the messaging you're constantly giving is, hey, you are being trusted. Take this opportunity to grow and show that you can be trusted. So then you're actually putting the onus on somebody else. People don't understand this. They think it's a great idea to be a class monitor. But what happens is, if you're a class monitor, you're really clogging your bandwidth. True. So does this help? Approaches can really make you smarter with your time, with your effort, with your energy, and also bring you closer to your team.
Absolutely. I think very well said, right? And energies are the most important things which actually keep the whole harmony on when you go to work, right? And true. I feel personally that, when I feel more motivated to start my work, if at all I'm seeing a positive energy, positive vibes around me, and people are understanding, people are trustworthy, people trust your work, people trust your decisions, right? And that can only come with once you also put some effort from your side, right? To basically improve the relationships, to improve the emotional quotient across the team. The thing that I want to talk about, MOUSHUMI, is how to improve professional networking in the office, within your own organization.
To begin with, I think this is an ongoing process. People should do it nonetheless. Irrespective of the future plans, networking is always a solid thing for us to be able to be seen, number one, and also to see others. You create your own visibility, your own brand, and at the same time, you get to interact with other people and know their side of the story. So I would say that networking is something that you have these things, no? What you start, what you stop, what you continue. Networking is only something that you should continue. There's nothing start or stop about it. It should continue as a natural process. And some of the things that key things which driving factors is, continuous communication, not the corridor gossip types, not the water filter discussion about what's happening in whose life, more like a macro level event organizing, podcast like you are doing, writing a blog, participating in a discussion, or even something simple like mentoring a junior.
Yeah.
So the more so the method that I always advocate is LLT. LLT is listen, learn, and train.
Listen, learn, and train. Wow.
And repeat. So LLT is something that we all should do. So when you're listening, you're absorbing. That's a passive participation. Then when you're learning, that's an active participation. Yeah. And when you're training, then you're giving it back. As a result, you're also getting feedback. Absolutely. And then you repeat it. So this continuously, and it could be one-to-one, one-to-many. And once you do that, then you are, creating your own, like I said, you create your own visibility, plus you see other people and you can learn from them also.
Absolutely. So just to add something more to it, right? So extended to this question, let's say if I am doing really good in my work and I am a software developer, a senior software developer, and I want to get, let's say, become a team leader, or maybe right now I'm leading, let's say, 2-3 consultants, but I want to go up and basically start doing leadership, providing the team leadership to even my FTEs or full-time employees in the company. And the team, like the size would maybe double than what I'm doing today. So how can I approach in terms of networking, to the leaders who are actually managing those teams, who are actually managing those tags or departments, I would say? How can I just build a professional network with them without trying to build something? So it should not be looking intentional, but I still want my professional network to include them in my professional network so that I can grow and I can do what I want to do, maybe get that role that I want to. So any ideas or any thoughts around this? Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it actually is a good opportunity when you're part of a big team and you have one leader. So one can come up with ideas on what more can be done for the team and present it to the team leader.
Okay.
To the leader. So number one, you can say, hey, there are these 3 new junior freshers in the team. Please give me an opportunity of mentoring them informally. And come up with an actual plan, not just go do lip service. Come up with an actual plan. If the plan is good, there's no smart manager who will not allow it. Managers are smart people. They see talent and they promote talent if they see the talent. Average ideas, mediocre ideas obviously don't see the light of day. So work on getting through some idea. Don't expect accolades there. Just learning informally. So you can do that. Number one, you get your face time with your leader also, and you get your face time with juniors also. And when you teach, like I said, LLT, you're teaching someone, you're training someone, you're mentoring someone, that feedback can be taken back to the leader and said, hey, this is what I learned. So you're creating your visibility also, you're doing networking also, and that is giving you a front side view of how actually teamwork works or what problems the manager faces on a daily basis. We're just getting one view of it and we can improve on it. So that's one. Second is, now this is very interesting, Ashish. Everybody loves to give gyan. Nobody wants to take feedback.
Yeah.
So it may not be a bad idea for an IC person to go and tell the leader, hey, do you mind if I schedule 15 minutes with you every month to showcase what work I've done and take your feedback on it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. There should not be any hesitation on putting one's work out there and saying that, please give me feedback. The day we stop taking feedback is the day we stop learning. But unfortunately, and I'm sure you see this too often, people are resistant and close to taking feedback. It's almost like feedback means only one thing, that it's a bad thing. It's not bad. It's important to know what we need to improve. So that is the second thing. The third could also be a cross-functional networking. You do not need to only engage with your leader. It's important to know what's happening in other teams, other leaders, other managers. So if there is an opportunity of some group work, some extra work, extra projects, some project which are informal projects, it's nice to throw in your hat and say, hey, I also want to volunteer for it. Say there's a Six Sigma project happening involving 3-4 teams. No harm in going and putting an idea on there and participating. So then you are also creating visibility with another leader of another team. And there could be learning from there also. So these are very specific things, doable, quite achievable.
Absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely. I think one thing that I've also noticed is like growing into the leadership position, one thing that I also personally see in people when I'm interviewing them for an inter-team, transfers, that how open they are basically for the feedback. Because many times, people try to give a lot of information about them, but they do not receive that. How good a person is in receiving attitude, as you said, rightly, right? That matters a lot.
That matters a lot, yeah.
And that actually also tells you, I think, in some way, how emotionally aligned you are.
True.
So great points. How can we negotiate compensation as a leader? What advice would be that which specifically for engineers who are transitioning into a leadership role, who got this opportunity? Now it's the time for them to get that, abhi karna hai, compensation. I need this. Any ideas, any guidance?
So automatically, most organizations, at least that's how it is till now, the moment somebody steps into a leadership role, the compensation gets bifurcated into fixed and variable. And the variable then stops being a monthly takeout or a quarterly incentive. It becomes an annual variable pay. And some of it is based on the leadership aspects, how well you manage team, how did you engage, inspire, create a productive team. So one of the things that people need to, when they are doing this compensation discussion, is to set very clear or get very clear expectations. Otherwise, it can be extremely ambiguous. So when, suppose the compensation is being discussed and part of it is variable annual bonus, then what is it based on? Because some of it, people management, some of it is ambiguous.
Yeah.
How do I make people feel? How will I measure that? So work with the manager, work with the leader to ensure that it is not left to anybody's interpretation. Because that's an easy trap to fall into. When we start out, we can start with a lot of ideas and engagement things, but if they are not measurable, then it becomes my version versus your version on whether I did a good job. And if the compensation is linked to that, then it's a loss for the employee. So that articulation of measurable takeaways or outcomes is very critical. So it is not just a discussion of compensation, it is also discussion of the KRAs or the OKRs.
Yeah.
So both come together.
Absolutely.
The other part is because another part, now that you're mentioning this, another part is leadership effectiveness takes time. If you hire somebody, train that person will take time to be productive. So then some of the compensation should account for that. So for example, say, it should not all be linked to an outcome, because the outcome will take time to be achieved. Productivity will not happen overnight. So some of this has to be something that is giving motivation for the manager to continue also. So everything should not be based on one outcome. Some of it should also be based on efforts.
Absolutely. So I think what I'm getting from this summary is like, when you transition into a leadership role, you need to ensure that you are defining the KRAs with the manager when you start and then you have some tenets through which you are going to measure when the right time comes in.
True.
And one thing that also works out for me, I mean, what approach I used to follow and I follow today is like, I define some KRAs and also I define my outcomes. I keep writing that on a document.
Yes. Documentation is very important. Articulation, documentation, sign off.
Yeah.
That is also important. The other person should also agree.
Absolutely. So, but just to add to this question, right? So how I mean, from understanding of the compensation differences itself. So being an IC, individual contributor versus a leader, should there be any difference? Specifically now we are seeing like startups are very tech oriented. So now engineering managers, senior engineering managers, directors are coding. But of course, they are doing managerial job as well. But there are organizations like investment banks, wealth management firms, or the big tech, which are like old legacy companies who are still working in the model of, let's say, the organization model of, okay, either IC or a manager will not do. So now the landscape is changing because there are so many starters. Of course, for a techie, most of the options will be open from a starter's perspective. They are really eager to get hired, right? So what would be your thoughts around, like, is there really a difference, or it just happens depending on organization to organization? Can we define some standards around it for the people?
No, it's very important that there's a differentiation. See, at an IC level, the developer is responsible for doing code. The code should work, it should be good quality code, and it should lead to the final outcome, which is simply based on the craft, technical craft. Whereas as a leader, there's a lot of other aspect. For example, do you know the differentiation of who's a good coder and who's not a good coder? Who's a good developer, who's not? Are you hiring right? What are you hiring based, or what is the basis of your hiring? Are you training them well? Are you making them productive? Are you ensuring that you're filtering out the wrong people and ensuring that the right people are motivated, trained, retained? So there are so many other non-technical aspects that get automatically part of the job. Then the compensation has to take into account that part also. So the job becomes more complicated, more diverse. The other things which are non-technical, which come in handy, which come in as part of the job. And these may be things which take 50-60% of the time, maybe more. And these are also things that there is no easy learning. The person has to self-learn. So the person has to feel adequately compensated for all of this. Otherwise, it seems like it's a big headache. Then a person might as well say, hey, I want to be an IC. If I am taking on extra things for which I have to put in extra effort to learn, I would want to be compensated for that.
There are positions in the market today, which is like talking about, let's say, principal engineer or distinguished engineer who are doing architecture, but still they are not managing. So they are still working at an IC, but they are still having a equivalent designation like managers are. Those organizations are also there, right, which are defining these flat roles. What are your thoughts around those specific roles or for those people who are in these organizations?
So those are specific, specialized roles, and they have their own value because they also get an opportunity of keeping their mind away from clutter and only focus on solving a business problem through technology. However, if you see, the number of such people is less. So in an organization, if you have 100 managers, you will have 10 of these people. You cannot have the other way. You cannot have 100 of such people and 10 managers. It becomes extremely lopsided and unsustainable. So for 80% of the organization's business, you need these managers. And then 20% of the work, which needs a lot of clutter-free thinking, deep diving into technology and only technology, you need these people. If you don't have the balance well, then you're creating a very lopsided organization. So yes, those roles are critical, but we have to remember that those roles cannot be plenty. You need only 10 of these, whereas you may need 100 of these managers. And these managers are basically running the show.
So this actually pushes me to ask a very funny question to you. And I'm sure many people have that in mind, right? Can ChatGPT replace managers in the long run? If not, why? Or if at all you think that is even possible, considering the emotional question part that we just spoke about.
So whenever I use ChatGPT from an HR perspective, all I get are possibilities as answers. There is nothing definitive that the ChatGPT is ever able to give. Because my questions are people-related questions. So if I say that, what is the best way of employee retention, for example. So then ChatGPT will throw out multiple possibilities. And those are all good possibilities. But it is only a human being that can tie those possibilities together to the current situation and see which of these possibilities can actually be made into an action item. That only a human brain can do.
Yeah.
So the emotion, so a machine cannot think for itself. What ChatGPT does, as far as my knowledge goes, is there's a lot of data that's already pre-fed.
Yeah, true.
And it churns through those things to come up with the most correct or nearest answer to the question. So someday there will be a question which a ChatGPT may not have. So, and especially when people, for example, what is the difference between, say, Ashish and MOUSHUMI? Right? So then ChatGPT will look at your, your body weight, my body weight, your looks, my looks, your qualification, my qualification.
Yeah.
But how will you and I react to a certain problem that nobody can anticipate? That ChatGPT cannot answer. That your family member or your friend and my family member, my friend can answer.
Can only answer. And we
So
cannot have data for everyone available at all the time. There are so many
correct.
across the globe. So
Correct.
very nicely put. Thank you so much. I can understand that, but this question, why it comes, because right now it's like a wave of the conversation.
True. By the way, on the contrary, actually, because of tools like ChatGPT, individual contributors are more to worry.
More to worry, yeah.
Because they have more job skills associated,
Yeah.
job roles. Their job roles are entirely about a craft.
Yeah.
A craft can be learned.
Yeah.
Whereas a human problem cannot be learned. So they are more to worry than the managers.
Yeah, and I think there are beautiful tools available today which can help you to write your code also.
True, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, they are available on cloud, they're available even as vendor third-party platforms. And
True,
when you can code with some logic given, like they can also create SQL queries for you. I think one more thing that is there for ChatGPT related point is just a small point, that even today we can give machine learning models some data, whatever data we give, but then it is historical data. The human intelligence always also is forward looking. So based on the environment, we can always engage. So the complexity of human brain is such that we can do much better if at all we are utilizing our potential, of course, which many people don't, and that's why we are talking about this, having a podcast. But the people, like human brain is very complicated. It actually forward looking. It actually adjusts. I don't think a machine learning model which looks at the history can make a decision.
They cannot. Yeah.
Now, just one point on the compensation side, and we'll move on to the other set, right? Market trends on leadership compensation. So are there any emerging market trends that in leadership compensation that you would like people to know, especially in the market today, which is like inflationary, Fed taking actions, have so much of layoffs already happened in the market? Anything still that is looking positive in the market for the future leaders, what it would be?
So paradoxically, while there are layoffs happening, most organizations are tightening the belt around retention of leaders. So one part of compensation has become simply associated with staying with the organization, tenure-based compensation. So earlier it used to be fixed pay, variable pay, profit sharing, or ESOPs. Now there's one more addition that has happened very strongly, which is purely on retention. That's because, like I said in the past, that leadership plays a very critical role in turning around the productivity. So it is very important that a person stays. Otherwise, the good work can come started by somebody can become completely undone if the person leaves. For a certain level of sustainability, for a certain level of excellence, excellence can only be done over a period of time. It is not a flash in the pan overnight thing. So therefore, one of the compensation changes that has become very strong is leadership retention compensation.
Leadership. Okay, so it is basically based on the period that
the tenure. Yeah. And they are being made very lucrative so that people see value in staying back. So that is one. The second is also, it has become, earlier it used to be like, say, very, very specific business and project-based deadlines and compensation. Today, it is also related to how quickly you can build your team, how effective is the team that you have built, how soon could you turn around a certain problem. So those kind of problems which involve a little bit of the business or a tech understanding plus people understanding, those kind of outcome driven compensations are also happening. So, for example, say your KRA has that you have to expand and have three
Sorry, can you define KRA for the audience once? How do you
key result areas.
key result areas?
Yeah.
So it is
So
primarily KPIs. Also, some companies we call KPIs.
you have different nomenclature.
Yeah.
Potato.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Go ahead.
So those kind of things, which is very, very leadership oriented goals, those are again being compensated. So, for example, if you were tasked with building a team and you have been able to build a team within a certain stipulated time, that itself becomes a reason for you to be compensated on X amount of your total compensation.
True, but looking at the startup environment that we are living today, specifically in India, right? The startups don't have a longevity in terms of the tenure because startups themselves are not very old, right?
True.
So how do you define these kind of compensations for the startups? Is it like the period for a startup would be a 1 year, would be a long term versus a big tech, or basically a longer, an old firm, it would be 5 years would be good enough? How do you define those?
Actually, the tenure-based compensation is happening more in startups than long-term, bigger organizations. Because organizations don't have that need. It's already streamlined. So what happens is bigger organizations need leaders to work in an assembly line model. Leaders are never having the responsibility of fixing a problem at one single go. They are fixing only one part of a problem. Whereas in a smaller organization and a growing organization, it is very important that the leader takes the responsibility of fixing a whole macro issue, setting up a particular unit or fixing up or completely managing a client end to end. Because these deliverables are so big, therefore it is actually the startups which are giving this kind of compensation, the tenure-based compensation.
Awesome. And the starters would be defining based on their own standards, like 1 year, etc. would be enough. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Next section is on the hiring trends, and being an HR, of course, this question has to come to you. How do you see current state of tech hiring, specifically around the mid-career, let's say 10 to 13, 14 years of experience, people who are looking out, but somehow they are stuck? What would be the silver lining that they can follow in current market?
This is a very tricky tenure for any professional, tech or non-tech, because 10 to 15 years is when either you are middle level, in a bigger organization, you're middle level, in a smaller organization, you should be at a leadership level. And it's quite possible that no one has trained you to be either.
Yeah.
So that is the reason why upskilling, continuously adding, learning to your own professional self is an individual responsibility. Very often, now this is something that I always say, very often people confuse number of years of experience to the skill they bring to the table. It has to match. If I have 13 years of work experience, I should be delivering 13 years worth of value.
But how do you
quantify?
Maybe
more.
Sorry to
quantify. Say I have done the kind of business problems that I've solved, the kind of responsibilities I've had, the kind of macro issues that have been added to my job component, all of these define the kind of value I'm adding to the table. So say if it's a very simple question to ask, can this job be done by somebody less experienced? If the answer, the kind of work, the kind of delivery, the kind of quality that a person is doing, can that be done by a person with less experience and charging less money? God forbid if the answer is yes, then you're not skilled enough. So then there is a challenge. So
sorry.
So what I was saying is, especially this problem happens more in India, wherein people confuse addition of experience as addition of value. The two things don't need to be same.
So today,
continue.
To follow up a question before you can add to your thought, right? Current state of tech hiring, looking at the current market, what is going on well, and what is like the right market? Like, say, what kind of companies would be there, are really hiring from what you see from your lens, versus what people should be careful, adding to what you said already, right? That I can't just, as a leader, I can't just go out and take a risk in a startup right now.
True.
considering that, the market is not so hot, so I will not may get stuck there, or maybe I get laid off. So
True.
all those fears are there. Yeah. Go ahead.
So current tech hiring, it's always like a sine curve. Sometimes it goes up. So 2 years back, tech hiring was booming. In the sense, people were hiring, people were getting paid well. Then is a spate of layoffs that happened recently, last 1 year. Things are picking up now. It's picking up, but not necessarily at the pace that it was there earlier. So the people are hiring, organizations are hiring at middle level, senior level, not so much, middle level definitely. But there is a difference now. People are being hired for the skills they bring to the table. No longer are fancy salaries being given out just because that person is walking around with 3 offers.
Yeah.
So that has stopped completely, which is why it is even more imperative that professionals watch out for what they are learning, what they are saying, what they are delivering, what they are showcasing. All of this has become super, super, super critical. The other part is no longer is quality or talent associated with just big brands. So because if you see, the layoffs happened in big organizations and they happened in mediocre organizations and smaller organizations. There is no trend. So today, having a Google or a Meta on your resume may not mean much unless that person is able to showcase that the work that I did, because a lot of layoffs happened in these organizations because it was seen that people were doing work and projects which were not very useful. The organization did not need them. So this is another trend that people have to watch out for. Just having a good name on your resume will not guarantee much unless we are able to prove that the project that I was part of gave me good learning. I bring good, solid work experience that is valuable and critical. I have a good, solid understanding, and I was not just part of a large crowd.
And I believe this trend you're talking about is about not only about starters, but also every organization, every
organization. Yeah. There's no given. There's no given that if I'm from Microsoft, I must be good. There's no given that if I have a computer science degree from a good esteemed college, I'm good. That given part is all gone forever, I think. Every interview is like taking the CAT and GRE all over again.
And for one position, I think today on an average, earlier, let's say in that great attrition time, there were, let's say, 50 resumes for one position. Now it might be 100.
True.
That fair?
True.
Okay, cool. So just extension to that, what are your predictions for the future hiring? Let's say we are not going to stay in this. Will the great attrition again come back? If at all it is, when should we expect it? Of course, considering the environment that we are, let's say the Fed things improve in the long run, let's say by next year. Do you foresee that future hiring gearing up in the right way?
If I were to harbor let me call it an informed guess, the economic predictions are still not that great for, say, the US, UK markets. And that will obviously have its impact on the Asian markets, including Indian market. So it's while we are not going to have a big resignation wave again, we are also not going to have a big hiring wave again. It's not going to be a wave. At best, it could be ripples because people have become guarded. And the one thing that has happened, which of course is unfortunate, is startups have been found to have burnt cash a lot. Every startup which had a lot of money ran out of money because they burnt cash. And the single largest cash burning has been because of mindless hiring. People cost have been the biggest one, apart from other costs. So naturally, one can't blame the entrepreneurs for being very careful about burning cash in hiring people. So it's going to be guarded. It's going to be like a ripple, not a wave. But yes, at least for India, which is a big economy, I think it's not looking so bleak. There is hiring going to happen, but yes, people have to be reasonable. They cannot, at 2 years back, people were literally arm twisting employers.
Yeah,
everybody is walking around with 5 offers, and that was creating a artificial surge of salaries. That's probably not going to happen.
Absolutely. So what I get from your point is like, if at all you want to go with a very fair mind, expectation, even if you're searching, get the right things on the table so that because you will be compared against many other people. And a lot of time employers are putting in to ensure that they are hiring the right talent now. And the compensation will not be exemplary like it was 2 years back.
True.
But would you suggest the people, like, again, going back to the same software engineers, techies, 10 years, should they stay in their roles or try to, or they should go ahead and take more risks? Or this is the right time to just be where you are? What do you suggest?
See, if I were to give a pragmatic answer, stay where you are. Try to make the most of it. But if you are a person, but if you are a top order talent, you're better than the rest. Suppose one has to be realistic about themselves. Suppose somebody has had a track record of always being, a maverick in the right direction, who has a huge risk appetite, then no harm in venturing out. But yeah, if you have always been part of the top 8, you're 80% or you're the top 20%, and one should know where we stand. So if you're part of the 80%, then stay where you are. If you're the top 20% of talent, you have been top 20% in your college, in your organization, everywhere, no harm in taking a risk, because there is always room for excellent talent.
Yeah. But do you see that any specific emerging skill sets that are in demand today, which people should focus on? Any tech or non-tech also? Like, let's say you're hiring a leader. So any specific skill set that you definitely need in that person today versus what it was not earlier? Or
that's a good question. Actually, interestingly, contrasting to what it was even 3-4 years earlier, any leader who is going to suggest or propagate building a huge team is no longer wanted. Any leader who comes across as being cost conscious and frugal and more methodical in building balanced approaches and not going overboard, that skill is valued now.
Wow.
So earlier it used to be, if you can build a tech team of, or a development center of 2,000 people, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Today, the thought process is all focused on productivity and cost optimization. So rather, the person should say, I should be able to give you excellent work with 200 people. I don't need 2,000. That skill is important.
Beautiful point. Yeah. So I think right now you have to show how have you saved cost for the firm and still got the delivery.
Productivity, value, cost optimization, stakeholder management. These are important skills.
These are important skills. Yeah. Awesome. That's a great advice. I'm sure people who are listening to this, they are getting a lot of value. This is gold advice, guys. If I was in your experience and I was getting this advice, I would have been a different person.
Come on.
How do you craft an effective leadership resume as an HR? Of course, there is an ATS, which is the automatic, that system, trust software, which is actually refining the resumes for you before even it comes to you. Then HR, and then the hiring manager, and then it goes to basically the next level, I believe, right? Or maybe there will be multiple people, like, let's say it's coming from a third party, then they will also review, etc. They will have their own ATS. So what would be a right way of crafting an effective leadership resume? We don't need like details in terms of pages, etc. But what highlights that you're looking at as an HR or a hiring manager?
So in the top, the first look that anyone gives in the resume, they would like to get this answer to this question, what's in it for me or for my organization? So any resume, especially for leadership, the idea should be to focus on showing not just what we did, but rather what was the impact of what we did. So say I converted this to active clients, so many leads into so many active clients, or I expanded the business from India to Southeast Asia. Those are real-term outcomes. Or I reduced the cost by 50% with 300 team member team. So the CV should the first outlook should not be about whether I created 10 processes or I hired 200 people. It should be more about what did those processes achieve, or what did those people do? How did it impact the business? Because anybody hiring a leader Who hires a leader? The entrepreneur, the CEO, the person who is managing the P&L. So any person who's managing the P&L, the profit and loss, would always be interested in outcome and impact. So as leadership resume should always talk about the impact. Now here is the challenge. Most technocrats, most technology leaders are never trained to look at the big picture. So many of them are extremely weak in showcasing the impact. They talk of how many product features did they build, or what is the new product that they brought to the market. They do not talk about the GTM strategies, the go-to-market strategies, or which target audience was it, or how did it create a change in the lifestyle of the users.
Yeah, true.
So that is a gap that really needs to be filled. And I have seen this multiple times wherein technical leaders are great people, good at technology, but they do not know how to sell. They cannot sell themselves. They do not know how to showcase their own abilities, let alone their team's work.
Beautiful thought. I think that's a very excellent point because, looking at the leadership tenets that we already touched upon in the first section, right? This is also an important tenet, right? A leader knows how to sell, and even if it's themselves that they want to sell to the employer, they want to show the value that they bring in. They should be able to sell the product as well as themselves, right? They should be able to sell the value that they bring in. And it is also true, not even when you're going for an interview, but also, and I'm not sure, you might have worked with, of course, many people there. But what I feel is like, if at all you are within an organization, even sometimes you have to sell yourself to your peers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even in HR, I keep telling my peers also and my team members also, you need to talk shop. You need to know business. At the end of the day, the person at the top who's funding us, he is looking for outcome. He's looking for profits. He's looking for danda. Simple. So if we do not know how to connect the dots into the big picture, we are not doing our jobs, be it a leader or an HR or anybody else for that matter.
Excellent. So those were the questions primarily from my end, but I can keep going looking at the rich experience that you bring in MOUSHUMI. But anything else, any other advice that you would like to give people outside of this, from your perspective, specifically to the budding women leaders, right? Because you being a woman, you have inspiration, you have so many awards, and you have done so much across the industry with so much of experiences, created teams from scratch. So being an HR leader, a woman leader, of course, what advice would you have for the women software engineers who are listening to this for getting that leadership role, both in terms of the role as well as the compensation? Because today the equality is more important, even equity of pay is more important. So what kind of advice you would give to them?
Thank you, Ashish. First of all, thank you. I also had a good time talking to you, and some of these things are so close to my heart. This is what I do every day. So it feels good to get a space to talk about it. For women leaders, particularly, what I have experienced and what I would like to share is it's important to be articulate. Gender harmony is a two-way street. So if we want something, if we want respect, we need to give respect. If we want equity, then we need to take responsibility. If we want equal opportunities, we need to rise up to the challenge. So one of the things that is becoming a little bit of a problem, which is actually going against women professionals, is women often playing gender card for no reason. So I would suggest that let's be responsible, let's be reasonable. We want something, we have to give something. If we want to be trusted, we have to learn to be responsible and give trust.
Excellent. I think this is a very alternate advice or alternate way of thinking that you are bringing in. But yeah, I mean, equality is also both sides, not only one. But yeah, that's a very nice advice. And I think people who are listening to it, they would be very proud to hear from you, being a woman leader, right? These kind of things which are like true and basically very realistic, which actually happened. So thank you so much for pouring your heart out, MOUSHUMI. And I think I wish all the very best to you for your career. And of course,
thank you, Ashish.
Of this, I'm sure after this goes out, there will be a lot of questions coming in to do another one with maybe focus towards women in leadership kind of thing. But excellent to be part of this and hearing a lot of things I learned. A lot of things actually I went back into my past, and actually I was able to relate to what mistakes I have made, which I should not have done, if at all I was knowing. I've gone through this.
Ashish, you're being very modest. I know your career. You have done very well.
No. Seriously, I think, yeah, it's my privilege to have you here, and thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's an equal privilege to be here.
Yeah.